Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of December 28th. This will be our last show of the year. It's also our holiday weekend show. And it's a very complicated world out there, and we're all participating in it in one way or another. And every now and then we need a big dose of analysis and information. And we hope we can give you that today because we have the one and only, the incomparable, and I say that over and over, Don Rose, who has been an activist, a campaign manager, a reporter, someone of real importance for a long time here in Chicago. Later in the show, in our second segment, when we were really talking more politics, I'm going to ask him a little bit about his own history, because I really don't know where he came from, but I've been watching him for now 50-some years, I think. So let's get started, and with a big good morning to you, Don. How are you doing?
Pretty well, pretty well. Woke up, I was still alive. That's doing damn well at my age.
I know exactly the feeling, and I'm not even quite nipping at your heels on the age front. But I get, and I'm really glad that I receive from you an email every week with a column you've written. And I don't know much about where you distribute it and how you do and how people sign up. I know your email is donrose@aol.com. Is that right?
donrose65 at AOL.
Okay, so if people are interested in getting it, they should contact you. How about you give us a little bit of information about a subject of great importance, the media. We have seen the media bend. We have seen the media challenge. We're involved with the media. We are the media. We are like a small dose of it. How about sharing with us your comments for this week in your column that was called "The Media Must Fight Back"?
Yeah. Well, I'm very concerned, as are many, many people, about a complex of things, largely because of the decline of what we used to call the traditional media or the mainstream media. We are losing newspapers left and right. I don't remember what we're down to, but even many of the newspapers that are still in existence are owned by not by journalism families or a journalism heritage, but are owned by billionaires as playthings or holding companies, venture capital groups, and so on, who are, in a sense, stripping them down as much as possible to try to make them profitable. The Chicago Tribune is a perfect example of that. The reporters are holding on, doing as best they can, but they're under grim circumstances. And, the paper may be in serious trouble. And the other problem, TV and so on, are having their own problems too with the split up of media due to even groups like this. So in one sense, we here are part of the problem, but the immediate issue is that Donald Trump has declared war on the media, and he is going after them in the manner of all autocrats, trying to destroy any media that may be critical and accurate about him. People may remember recently ABC paid him $15 million because of a comment made by George Stephanopoulos, who, in describing a case, said that this guy was convicted of defaming a person and of rape. Well, in the particular jurisdiction that he was convicted, rape is very narrowly defined as the penetration of a vagina by a penis. In most circumstances, any penetration of any orifice in a woman by another body part, fingers, et cetera, constitutes rape. So if he was speaking generically and that's accepted, he was just, even the judge in the case at hand, this was E. Jean Carroll's defamation and sexual assault case. It was widely felt that even though there was this technical definition in that one location, that one jurisdiction, that the term rape would otherwise suffice. So it's a debate, and it could have been a case, but ABC decided not to fight the case, even with the encouragement of others. And you ask why? 15 million may seem like chump change to ABC, but ABC, it happens, is owned by Disney. Disney has to live with Trump and Trumpianism and Florida, so they just scooted away. Now, people are very fearful of this. Trump has also filed some very strange cases. He's filed a case against CBS for the way they edited a 60-minute interview with Kamala Harris. He said they edited to make it look good. It's nonsensical, but much more nonsensical than the case against Stephanopoulos. There's another case in the works which people may have read about because it's kind of fascinating. The Des Moines Register published a poll by Ann Seltzer, who was one of the finest, most respected, most accurate pollsters in the country. This poll showed before the election that Kamala Harris was beating Trump 47-44 in Iowa. Now, that's a shocking number, and hardly anybody believed it.
We hope it was true.
We hope it was true, sure. Anything else, anything resembling that. Anyway, Trump is suing the pollster and the newspaper for, quote, election interference. Now, the odd thing is, even with that poll, he carried Iowa by 13 points. So what interference can he show, and how does a poll become interference? We've never seen a poll that's turned around, that's made a difference in an election, a favorable poll, an unfavorable poll. Now, these are what we would call frivolous cases. And there are others, also in the works. And the media cannot bend the knee to these, because they will, in effect, be putting themselves out of business or given any serious thought. As it turns out, as a case, this is a federal case, but a state or a local case that is beyond the pale, like some of these, the two I just described and others that Trump may have in the works, are deemed frivolous, and if a case is found frivolous, they can get the person who sues with a frivolous case can get back all the court costs, the lawyers' fees and court costs of the quote defendant. And this is the idea. It's you file these cases to punish the other side, basically. They know this case isn't going anywhere, but if they can make them spend a lot of money and look bad, and it's not like they have to pay off $750,000 the way Fox did, but in another case. But once they get one of these cases marked frivolous and they get their money back, it's going to, in effect, stop this procession of Trumpian cases trying to punish the media. Lawyers won't take it. A lawyer who files a frivolous case can be disbarred in some circumstances, and the defendant gets the money back and so on. So if the media don't fight the way ABC gave up, we're all in a lot of trouble. That's the end of serious journalism in America.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Don, let me ask you a little bit about the Des Moines Register. I used to think of Iowa as kind of a liberal state. It certainly has turned over the years. And I'm not sure where the Des Moines Register is at politically, but apparently they've taken a stand that people on the progressive or at least middle of the road to the left side are pretty happy that they are fighting back and they didn't give in the way ABC did. And I'm just wondering, I've heard that their subscription rates are going up. And I'm just wondering if you know anything about the paper itself and maybe a brief thing on what happened to Iowa when it went from, I forget who the senator was, but he was running for president. He was a Democrat, and it's been a while since we've had a Democrat elected out of there, including in the Congress, much less the Senate.
Well, the Des Moines Register is what we would call generally a liberal paper, but it's a decent paper. It's known for its accuracy. It's not a partisan paper, but I would compare it in many ways to the politics or the journalism of the Sun-Times, which is a small paper now, but in trouble. So it's a paper to be trusted and to be nurtured. If they went out of business, that would be a big, big problem. And currently, they're owned by people in the journalism tradition rather than by these outsiders who don't really give a damn about journalism but are looking for something profitable. Iowa, one time it was very liberal. We had, not long ago, they had 2 Democratic senators. Just the way Wisconsin had not just 2 Democratic senators, but both were Jewish. So it was,
Wisconsin.
And these states have migrated with the Middle West. The great book, What Happened to Kansas? It's happened to Iowa for some reason. One always hoped that Iowa would come back. After all, it was Iowa in a Democratic primary in 2008 that gave Obama its vote and its standing. It's just part of the drift of the Midwest, and it may come back someday. And we hope some of these states will come back, that it's a pendulum swing, but it's part of determining what's happening in America. What happened in Kansas should have happened, didn't have to happen, but it did.
These things get complicated a little bit too. They get a little complicated when you have a state like Kansas, who we consider to be pretty conservative, but it has a Democratic governor, as I recall.
Yeah.
And there are these things that happen where people in what we call red states now kind of rise up around support of abortion rights, those kind of things. So it's a little complicated, and I think the Democrats probably missed on a number of things. Clearly, we didn't win the election. I'm going to ask you straight up, Don, what do you think some of the things are that resulted in the Democrats losing this election? Not by big numbers. Nobody got 50%, but we did get squeaked out, and we are now out of power. What are your thoughts about how that came to be?
Well, my first reaction is that people responded positively. Enough people responded positively to a race that was one of the most sexist, homophobic, racist in modern history. I mean, you have to go back to the Civil War and the years around it to get the kind of language and overt nastiness that we saw here. We missed some issues. For example, transgenderism, we supported but ignored the attacks on it, not thinking that this was going to influence an election, but it certainly was an influence. Obviously, we did not recognize how seriously unpopular Joe Biden was, because to our liberal aesthetic, he was a far better president than most of us expected him to be. You look at the actual record, and he's down in FDR territory. People might argue this or that. He had failings, but we also expected, even though we knew that the public deemed inflation to be a problem, despite the fact that we were beating inflation. The economy was very good on the record, but people were upset because of what they paid at the grocery store, the gas tank. We were hoping that this would be overcome by the abortion issue, which is one that reached into the conservative realm. As we pointed out earlier, many so-called red states, conservative states, were wind up with pro-abortion majorities when it was tested for their constitutions. So we overlooked or hoped for problems that we knew and did not respond to them adequately. We did not take on, with full understanding, high prices. What we could have done about it, they could have formulated. We also, we go back to another point in time when Joe Biden, who was seriously unpopular, unfortunately, undeservedly, he was terribly unpopular, and he ran again, despite the fact that people were expecting him, or he once called himself a bridge to the future, and he didn't use quite those words, but people did not expect him to run for a second term. We could have gone through a normal process and a candidate chosen. Now, the candidate might have wound up to be Kamala Harris if Biden had not run and we went through the process. she would have been a popular choice. But the whole thing was contaminated by our own refusal to recognize how bad things were. And then obviously we had to have Biden drop out after saying he's running, after winning his primaries, et cetera, et cetera. And the public just didn't buy this. You can point to a lot of things. You can say if Harris had run after winning primaries, with Biden out of it, she might have done far better. We would have had a longer time to get to know her. I don't know how the saying goes, but failure has many fathers.
One of the things that got a lot of attention was young men, whether they be Black, Latino, or white, getting kind of moved over to the Trumpian side. A lot of talk about white kids watching Joe Rogan's show. There was a piece in the New York Times, I believe it could have been the Washington Post, that talked about some young influencers from the left out of Colorado taking on right-wing talk shows and that kind of thing. And it's sort of clear to me, and I'm sure you too, that not everybody out there who votes is watching MSNBC or reading The Guardian or Jacobin or Monthly Review, for left-wing kind of information.
Or reading anything.
They're not.
Or reading anything.
Yeah, not reading much of anything. And so I guess the question that I'm going to throw to you, and it's probably one for all of us, is how do we introduce the right wing, and particularly young men of all colors, to progressive ideas? How do we, I start having fantasies about traveling around in the Midwest and setting up shop on a corner and inviting people to have discussion, but I'm not sure what the move would be. How do we get to young people and introduce them to ideas that are better for the worldwide population everywhere?
Well, basically, we've got to go to where they are. First of all, we've got to get some ideas straight in our heads. We have to stop being so damn snobby about certain things. Take just a little thing. If somebody uses the wrong pronoun, we act like they said the N-word. Now that's ridiculous. We can't tell people how to think. Eventually, people will overcome the transgender problem the same way that they overcame gay marriage. But even gay marriage is only supported by 60% of the people. It's not a universal. And a lot of those young people and Latinos and Black men were responding the same as white men to a woman. There is misogyny there. And Latinos particularly, we use a Latino word, macho, to describe, misogyny. It's all there. So we have to do two things. We have to refine the message and decide how we're going to settle out certain seemingly irreducible problems, such as the question of women competing, trans women competing in sports. It's as legitimate an issue as in other parts of the world. They deal with the amount of testosterone in a woman. And if you are a woman, a cisgender woman, if your testosterone is beyond a certain level, you can't compete. Now that's only in some jurisdictions, but it's one that's bigger than just the argument around transgender. So we got to solve things like that.
How much do you think we should, I used to think of the Democratic Party as the party of the working class. Then I started to be tricked into thinking that some very rich people are leaning progressive when it's in their interest, maybe. And I'm just wondering, there's a lot of talk. I think I saw a young congressman out of Texas who is in the Progressive Caucus. He may be the new head, but really talking about stressing the working class roots of the Democratic Party, talking more economic issues. I don't think people look to the history that much. They kind of go with the personality and a little bit of a whim. But I'm wondering on how much should we really shift back to labor and the supporting of strikes and really getting the working class on the side of a party that will bring results for them, not just talk about it.
Well, we have to, again, develop the policies and the means of communication. There's two things involved here. One, if we look back historically, the break between the labor movement and the Democratic Party had very unfortunate roots. It had roots in racism. In the 70s, when unions began to become conscious of civil rights and take on more people of color. It was mostly black at that time. Latinos were not the major issue. But who broke away? People we call hard hats. And to me, that was where labor began to be disregarded. A certain significant number of people, particularly in the construction trades and others, departed from their unions politically because they were subject to the same racial problems and racial issues and racism that non-union people were. So that's one issue that we still have to resolve. When somebody who running a racist campaign winds up appealing across the board to almost every group, we still have a significant race problem in the United States. We also have a communications problem in even with the right message, we are not reaching the right people. What the Trump campaign did so brilliantly that we were really unaware of was find all the alternative means of communication, the so-called influencers. You put enough influencers together, and whether it's Rogan or some of the others, people you never heard of, and you exceed television. So you can own television and everything except Fox, and put out commercials, but you're still not reaching enough people that way, and you're not reaching them in the way that touches them. And we have to learn how to do that. And we have to analyze very, very carefully what the Republicans and Trumpians did in that election to reach an audience that we never touched.
I think when you talked about the 70s and hard hats, I think the issue there certainly was race, and I think it's the race issue is the main factor on a large scale. Whether people are aware of it or not, or conscious of it, it's something deeply embedded in the American grain for too many people, and that's white supremacy. So that's a given, and that's something that we're going to have to challenge, and it becomes a little more difficult as well as we make steps forward as more and more people of color move up in the world, so to speak.
Mhm.
Let me shift here, Don Rose, and fire a number of questions at you. There's always too many things to talk to you about than we have time, but here I go. What do you think? You have any predictions on what will happen in the Ukraine, in the Middle East, Gaza, and Israel, and the West Bank? Any particular thoughts on where you see that might shift in the next few months?
Well, take Ukraine, which I support wholeheartedly. I don't see a way out for the Ukrainians. I think eventually they're going to have to surrender, and it sounds like they're becoming more and more open to it, and tragically have to surrender some land. Now, how the negotiations are going to go, I don't know, but they will be accelerated by the fact that Trump is going to do everything he can to cut off support. So I don't think the outlook is very good. I think I can't lay it out because the geography is just incredible, but Zelensky is going to wind up in much worse shape than when he started, and I can't tell you the outlines of it, but I am not optimistic about the condition of Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering how much Europe will play a part in trying to fill a void if there is one. That remains to be seen. It seems like one of the good things that has happened in the past week is the rebels took over Syria. They're consolidating their military force. A lot of people from around the world are rushing to talk to them. It's a good story. It's a feel-good story. I'm not sure how long it lasts. We have Israel bombing parts of Syria now already. Any take on Syria, Israel, the West Bank situation?
I have some hopes that Syria will work its way back to become a democracy. It's going to take a lot. I'm a little worried about Trump saying that we shouldn't bother ourselves with Syria when we should be there and helping drop the terrorist designation of the group that took over Syria, because they look as if they're going to become democratic. So we've got to help move that along. And I'm a little more optimistic that can be done, because the forces that are coming together are on the more positive side. And it's a loss for Iran, and it's a loss for Putin. So I'm a little more optimistic about that situation. And if we go back many years, Assad's father was on the verge of making a deal with Israel. People have forgotten about that because the Assad who just fled has been in for so long, 20 years, which nobody expected. So I think there's some cause for optimism there. What is going to finally happen in Gaza? I think it's just a war of attrition. Netanyahu is using it to stay in power. He's using it, and he will be encouraged by the Trump people. They're just all out for the Netanyahu side there. So all I see, it don't end well. It's that Gaza situation, thanks to a lot of failures on our part to to rein Netanyahu in, and his hope that Trump gets elected. He got his wish, and he's going to get support, and Gaza is just going to atrophy, I fear.
Let me shift on to, let's bring it back home a little bit here. And we have an election coming up in 2026. And the House is now will be controlled by the Republicans, but narrowly. The Senate has a few more votes on the Republican side than they've had, and they will be the majority. What is your sense of the 2026 election and how the Democrats might fare?
Well, there I am. With only a few strands of hope. I think history tells us, and Trump's behavior tells us, that we will be able to take over the House at the midterms. He's heading in all the wrong directions. He's going to make mistakes. Inflation is continuing and will get worse. He says now that it's hard to bring prices down. He will not be able to bring prices down. They will go up. And as a result, we'll be able to take over the House. I don't know how big. It could be very big, or it could be, a small majority such as we've got there. That's our only hope. How much damage he can do in the 2 years before the midterms, we don't know. He is going to have trouble getting some of his goofier motions through, as we saw in the recent vote. There are some Republicans who are willing to buck him. So we've got to keep our fingers crossed. But I foresee a lot of damage being done by trying to throw 1 million people out of this country. It's not going to happen, but the course of it is going to be brutal, and we're going to see a lot of ugliness right there. So the other thing I have to say about that, he's coming up with strange programs, like he wants to take the canal back. Well, that's, we fought that battle 20 years ago or more.
He wants to buy Greenland.
He wants to buy Greenland. Now, my theory is that he throws out these loony ideas as a distraction, while a lot of people infiltrate this government. Like he gives us his most bizarre candidates for his office, for his cabinet, as a way of changing the conversation, while the billionaire class is planting a lot of other people we never heard about and we don't debate. They are not bizarre. They're just unknown, but they have the same goal, and that's reducing taxes for the billionaire class. Now, that's always been his main goal. I don't think he's going to be able to harm Social Security or Medicare, although that's a possibility. So I think we're going to just see week by week a new issue we're going to have to fight, and he'll use these other weird things as a distraction, and I can't tell you yet how much damage will be done. He may not be able to accomplish much with this strange house he's got.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things I want to talk to you about. Sooner or later, we'll get to talking about Illinois and Chicago. I really want to thank you and appreciate you for coming on regularly on the show over the last few years. I look to you as a source of information and analysis, and glad to consider you my friend. And I want to